Hi everyone, and to those who are watching this. So we are from group 3 of Bshm 40, and we will discuss about Dr. Rizal's life. So you will be able to know about his writings, some of his famous novels, poems, and also we will also discuss about his political views, social views, and by the end of this presentation, we will discuss as well some facts and trivias about Dr. Rizal. So I'll just have a brief introduction. So Dr. Rizal, also known as Jose Pretacio Rizal Mercado y Alonso Realonda, was born in Laguna. That was last July 19th, 1861. So if you can see here in the presentation, he studied medicine in Manila, and as we all know, he's very proficient in different language. So why do you think Dr. Rizal is proficient in different language? Of course, we all know that he used to travel in different countries. That is why it's really necessary for him to know a lot of languages. So yeah, so he traveled to Europe and he became part of propaganda movement, which is with fellow Filipinos, that is called Reform. So during that time, he wrote Noli Me Tangere, which means touch me not, which is also to address the dark intention of the Spanish colonial in the Philippines, with particular focus on the role of the Catholic friars. So during the Spanish colonization, he wrote Noli Me Tangere to address some of the issues during those times. And because of that, as we all know, Dr. Rizal used to fight against them through writing, right? So the book was banned. He returned to the Philippines. As you can see, that was 1887, and he was targeted by the police because Philippines, as we all know, is colonialized by the Spanish. So he returned to Europe after that on 1891, and he continued writing El Filibusterismo. So after a year, he go back to the Philippines and exiled to the Pitan. That was 1892. So he stayed there until 1895, and during 1895 era, he asked actually permission to travel to Cuba. So as we can see, it was approved, but in 1896, Andres Bonifacio revolted. So as we can see, Rizal, that was the time when Rizal was arrested. So after the trial, he was convicted of sedition and sentenced to death by the firing squad in Manila. So that was 1896 as well. So within that year, so he was just convicted for death or sentenced to death on December 30th of 1896. So he was 35 years old during that time. So after 2 years, Spanish colonization ended, and that's actually the reason why he was marked as a national hero. So he did a lot of things to fight for our rights. Especially Dr. Rizal is known for being brave for fighting against the Spanish, because we all know that we are in our country and we have the rights to live. So after that, that's about a quick history about Dr. Rizal.
For the introduction, so in the Philippines, philosophers seem to be taken as outrageous, narcissistic, or annoying. So dito sa Pilipinas during that time, at kahit naman ngayon, syempre, kapag napakinggan natin yung salitang philosopher o yung pilosopo sa Tagalog, di ba, nakakainis. Kasi yung mga pilosopo kasi yung mga kapag yung tinanong mo, Although, nandun naman nga yung point ng kanilang sagot, pero parang kung titignan, parang masama pa rin siyang pakinggan or hindi siya magandang pakinggan. So, being a Filipino himself, si Dr. Rizal joined the majority of the Filipinos to consider philosophers as nonsense, dumb, and stupid. In fact, sometimes crazy. Pero kahit na kakainis, tawagin or tignan itong mga philosophers na to, si Dr. Rizal, ang ating pambansang bayani, ay sumali pa rin. Sumali doon or napasailalim siya sa tinatawag na philosopher. Mga philosopher ay mga walang alam, mga mangmang, and that is evident in his use of Pilosopong Tasyo in his notable writings. So, si Pilosopong Tasyo, ito, ginamit niya yun sa isang novel niya, I think that was No Limit Angele, if I'm not mistaken. So, ginamit niya yun doon as a character there. Pilosopong Tasyo, kapag tinanong mo sila, meron silang ibang reasons dun sa inyong katanungan. So, yung sagot nila is kakaiba, kumbaga, dun sa iyong hinihinging kasagutan. Rizal was known as an ilustrado. So, kapag sinabi natin ilustrado ay nakapag-aral. Pagamat nakapag-aral, during that time, in the time of Rizal, o in the time of Spanish era, in Spanish period. And as an ilustrado, nabibilang sila sa tinatawag na middle class. So, sa mga middle class, sila yung may mga kakayahang makapag-aral during that time. And si Rizal ay isa doon. So, si Rizal so he was known as an ilustrado. In Rizal's political view, he conquered the country like the Philippines, should not be taken advantage of, but rather should be developed, civilized, educated, and trained in the science of self-government. Para kay Rizal, in this political view, kapag ang isang bansa daw ay sinakop or nasakop, katulad ng Pilipinas, sinakop tayo ng Espanya during that time, so dapat hindi sila nag-take advantage of that. Rather, para kay Rizal, dapat kapag sinakop ang isang bansa, dapat ito ay develop in a way na yung mga citizens ay papangalagaan. Yung mga welfare nila, magtatayo ng mga iba't ibang infrastructure and papalaguin, papaunlarin yung economy ng Pilipinas. In that way, magiging develop yung ating bansa, ang isang bansa, kapag siya ay nasakop. At the same time, civilized. Kapag sinabing civilized, of course, dyan napapasok yung tinatawag natin na human rights. Kapag human rights, in a way na ibibigay yung mga karapatan ng mga tao. Right for education, for example, yung right for education, right for health, right for safety, right for their religion, right for security, right for basic needs, right for food, shelter, or yung mga resources. And of course, dapat daw ay educated. So, dapat binibigyan ng pagkakataon lahat na makapag-aral at the same time. So, kapag binigyan mo ng pagkakataon na mag-aral, dapat tuloy-tuloy. At the same time, yung curriculum is nakabase or maayos na curricula para sa lahat and trained in the science of government. So, dapat ang isang bansa daw ay hinahasa or tinitrain siya on how to self-govern, kung paano niya papatakbuhin yung kanyang bansa sa larangan ng pamamahala. So, that was according to Dr. Rizal. Yun yung kanyang political view na kapag tayo ay sinakop ng isang bansa, ay dapat daw ay we should be developed by them. So, we should be civilized by them and educated by them. So, in his essay, The Philippines in Century Hence, contains predictions on the possible future of the Philippines within 100 years or a century. So, kumbaga, hinulaan niya, na-predict niya kung ano yung mangyayari sa Pilipinas pagkatapos ng ilang dekada or ilang taon. At tingnan natin kung nagkatotoo nga ba yung kanyang mga haka-haka or hula sa patungkol sa Pilipinas. Una, that the Philippines would stay a Spanish colony provided its citizens receive not only the rights and privileges of citizens, the Spanish crown, but also the inherent rights of a human being. So, Pilipinas ay magiging kolonya ng Espanya provided na yung mga mamayan, ang mga Pilipino, ay hindi lamang makakatanggap ng mga pribilehiyo or mga karapatan, katulad ng mga karapatan na tinatamasa ng mga Espanyol, but also the inherent rights of a human being. So, nagkatotoo. Yes, ang Pilipinas ay naging kolonya ng Espanya. Na, in that way, so, yung mga Pilipino naman during that time ay nagkaroon ng mga karapatan. Kung saan, hindi nga lamang siya kapantay or katulad ng mga karapatan ng mga Espanyol. So, next is that the Philippines will inevitably rights and vote against states. It continuously exploited and abused. So, nagkatotoo rin. Ang Pilipinas ay dahil sa patuloy na pang-aabuso at pagpapasakit ng mga Espanyol during that time sa mga Pilipino, nagkaroon ng tinatawag na revolusyon. So, revolusyon na pinamumunuan ni Andres Bonifacio. So, dahil sa patuloy na pang-aapi ng mga Espanyol during that time, nag-alsa mga, yun, and yun yung tinatawag na Philippine Revolution. So, next, that the Philippines may conquered by other nations, others says, and other countries distinguish. So, nagkatotoo rin. Matapos ang revolusyon, pagkatapos tayong tulungan ng US sa pagpapatalsik sa mga Espanyol, during that time, nag-take advantage naman ang mga Amerikano. So, sila naman ang, kumbaga, humilili or pumalit bilang mananakop ng ating bansa. So, hindi lang mga Amerikano ang sumakop sa bansang Pilipinas, pati rin ng mga Hapon, pati rin ng mga Japan. So, ibig sabihin, in his essay, nagkatotoo yung mga predictions ni Dr. Rizal sa Pilipinas. Naging kolonya tayo ng Espanyol, ng Pilipinas na ay nag-aklas laban sa mga Espanyol sa pamamagitan ng isang revolusyon, at ang Pilipinas ay nasakop ng iba pang bansa, hindi lamang ang Spain. So, here are the basic political reforms. Okay, ito yung mga reforma ni Jose Rizal para sa Pilipinas. Number 1, the restoration of the Filipino restoration, representation to the Spanish Cortes, and freedom of the press. So, kapag sinabi natin na restoration of the Filipino representation ay dapat manumbalik or gawing muli yung representation ng Spanish Cortes. Ibig sabihin na bibigyan ng pagkakataon na magkaroon ng representation ng mga Pilipino dun sa gobyerno, sa pamahalaan ng mga Espanyol during that time. At the same time, we have the power and we have the freedom of the press. So, kapag sinabing freedom of the press, we have the power to speech. So, bibigayan ng opinion laban sa gobyerno, laban sa pamahalaan. So, we have the freedom of the press. Number 2, reorganization of the administrative machinery. Kapag sinabi natin reorganization of the administrative machinery, so ano man yung makakatulong sa edukasyon, sa simbahan, so kailangan magkaroon ng reorganization. So, hindi lamang daw yung mga paring praile or paring Espanyol lang susunod. Kumbaga, reorganization in a way na yung sistema or yung pamamahala or yung pamamalakad ng simbahan at ng school at ng mga paaralan during that time ay magiging maayos or magiging maayos. Number 3, adoption and comprehensive examination and the publication of its results and allow Filipinos to have some opportunity with the Spaniards to hold government office. So, dapat bigyan ng pantay-pantay na karapatan ng mga Pilipino na makakuha din sila ng comprehensive examination. At the same time, bigyan ng oportunidad, walang discrimination regarding Filipinos and Spaniards. So, parehong bigyan ng opportunity na nakaupo sa pwesto or magkaroon ng pwesto sa gobyerno, Pilipino man or ang mga Espanyol. Number 4 is justice is the foundation of society and the government. So, lagi naman ganun. Kahit naman ngayon, since we are a democratic country, we have the tie of government, which is democracy. Justice is the foundation of society and the government. So, dapat laging pantay-pantay, may pantay-pantay ang karapatan, lalong-lalo na pagdating sa justice. Not only with that, but syempre pag sinabi natin justice, papasok pa rin dyan yung mga karapatan talaga ng mga tao. So, not only for justice na kapag ikaw ay nagkasala, totally ikaw ay kukulong na. So, not only that, kabilang na dyan syempre yung human rights ng mga tao or ng mga Pilipino during that time. And dapat yun talaga yung foundation ng isang lipunan at ng gobyerno. Yun talaga yung dapat kanilang pinapangalagaan, yung hustisya para sa lahat. Hindi yung kapag ikaw ay nagkasala at ikaw ay mayaman, pwede mong bayaran ang hustisya. So, ganun yung mga nangyayari during that time. Lalong-lalo na kapag ikaw ay isang Espanyol. Ang pinapaboran nila ay yung mga Espanyol, ang mga Pilipino, ang sadyang kawawa. So, dun pa lang sa punto na yun, wala nang justice when it comes to the government of this Spain during that time. So, let's have Rizal's concept of government and politics. So, Max Weber defines government as monopoly of the legitimate use of physical power. So, para kay Max Weber, ang gobyerno lamang ang dapat masunod. Ang gobyerno sa mga alituntunin o sa mga rules and regulations na pinapasunod nito. Kung ano lamang yung ipag-utos ng gobyerno, yun lamang yung dapat sundin ng mga mamamayan. At kapag hindi sumunod ng mga tao, pwede silang saktan. So that is according to Max Weber, which is unfair. So para kay Rizal, hindi makatarungan or unfair yung ganong sistema ng gobyerno or ng pamamahala ng isang bansa. So it emphasized the corruption of the Spanish. It emphasized in the corruption of the Spanish curriculum. So pag magamit yung gobyerno ng legitimate power, so most likely it looks like parang corruption sa paningin ni Jose Rizal. So during that time, pinibili ng mga Espanyol yung mga produkto or mga kalakal ng mga Pilipino sa murang halaga. Pinagbabayad sila ng buwis. Pinagtatrabaho sila ng walang bayad, ng sapilitan. So, yun yung nangyayari sa pamahalaan Espanyol during that time, which is unfair para kay Jose Rizal kasi ang nasusunod nga lang naman ay ang gobyerno with that physical power. So, Rizal wrote, in order to govern people, he does not know or understand. He ought to possess the talent of a genius and extraordinary knowledge. So, para kay Rizal, dapat hindi lamang tayo basta marunong umunawa. Kung marunong tayong umunawa, of course, dapat meron din tayong extraordinary knowledge. And yung kaalaman or yung karunungan na yun, kumbaga magiging sandata natin para yun kay Rizal. So, hindi lamang basta maawain ang isang tao. So, dapat marunong ka din mag-possess ng knowledge. So, dapat meron ka din kaalaman. Kasi yung kaalaman na yun, yung magagamit mo para sandata mo.
Magandang araw po. Ako nga po pala si Ronald Cuenca Jr. At ang aking tatalakayin po is tungkol sa Rizal Basic Political Terms. At ito ay mga political culture, political socialization, political ideology, nationalism, representative government, and democracy. Number 1. Political culture, values and attitude of government and political process held by community or nation. Ang beliefs ni Dr. Jose Rizal tungkol sa political culture ay magkaroon tayo ng liberalism o tinatawag na kalayaan at may equality ang pagtatrato sa bawat mamamayang Pilipino na dapat hindi inaabuso ng kanilang kapangyarihan na nakakaangat sa buhay. Ganun ang gustong mangyari ni Dr. Jose Rizal dahil alam niya ang maaaring mangyari sa kinabukasan ng kabataan kapag nawalan sila ng karapatan o kalayaan. Number 2. Political socialization. Acquire views and knowledge of individuals on politics. Ang political socialization ni Dr. Jose Rizal ay magkaroon ng tayong bawat individual na lakas ng loob upang itama ang mga maaaring gawing mali ng government. Dahil dapat nating ipaglaban ang ating sariling kalayaan sa mga maling ginagawa ng politiko. Dapat sanayin natin na magkaroon ng papahalaga sa values ng Pilipino at magkaroon ng sapat na kaalamanan sa pagdating sa politiko upang tayo ay may alam sa ginagawa ng politiko kung tama ba o mali ang kanilang ginagawa sa mamamayan Pilipino. Number 3. Political ideology. Knowing the institutions and roles of government. At dahil naman sa political ideology, ang gustong mangyari ni Dr. Jose Rizal ay dapat ang bawat tao ay maging parte ng government, ay mahusay at alam ang tamang ethical sa paggamit ng kanilang kapangyarihan. Dahil sa kanila, ang nakasalalay ang maaaring maging dulot sa bansa natin kung magiging maganda ba o hindi magiging maayos o ang institusyon ng ating Pilipinas. Number 4. Nationalism. It's the habit of identifying oneself with a single nation. Alam naman natin na si Dr. Jose Rizal ay naging kilanlan ng ating bansang Pilipinas. Isa siya sa maraming kaalaman sa nangyayari sa ating bansa at may kakayanan na maging isang leader. At ang kanyang mga ginawang libro ay may nilalaman kung ano ang kanyang kadikalaan ginawa upang maging maayos at magkaroon ng kalayaan. Ang bawat salita na naririnig natin ay may angkop na pagmamahal sa bansa sa kanyang libro. Kaya dapat tularan ang kanyang pag-iisip sa politiko dahil siya rin ang dahilan kung bakit mas naging maayos ang mga rules sa ating government. Number 5. Representative government. People decide on who will inherit the right to be in the government. Tungkol naman sa representative government, ay ang kanyang ideya dito ay magkaroon ng karapat dapat na uupo sa government. Dahil ang pagpasok dito ay magkakaroon ng kapangyarihan na gawin sa ating bansa at sa mga tao. Kaya dapat ang bawat Pilipino ay maging wais sa pagpili ng uupo upang sundin ang maaring ipagawa dito sa ikaganda ng ating bansa. Dahil ilang taong susundin ng mga mamayan ang gustong gawin ng mga nasa government. Kaya ang pagpili ng maayos ay magiging maganda ang kinabukasan ng bawat Pilipino ayon ang gusto po ng mangyari ni Jose Rizal. Number 6. Democracy. Chosen by the whole population of state through elected representatives. Ang pagkakasabi ni Jose Rizal ay dapat magkaroon tayo ng government na deserve ng bawat Pilipino, na nagpapalaganap siya na gamit ang kanyang sinasabi sa mga prinsipyo na dapat mayroon ang taong papasok sa government. Dahil sa pagdating sa democracy, alam naman natin na ang mga tao sa government ay may supreme power na dapat gamitin ng tama at gawing maayos ang sistema sa Pilipinas. Ayun lang po.
We can be free but we cannot be independent. We cannot be independent but we cannot be free. Para kay Jose Rizal, magiging malaya tayo pero hindi natin kaya maging isa or mag-isa kasi kailangan pa din natin ng tulong ng iba't ibang bansa. And of course, kung tayo man ay magiging isang malayang bansa, we can be independent but we cannot be free. May magtatangka pa rin na sakupin ang ating bansang Pilipinas. Before we can reach that true freedom that we're aspiring for, we need to have enough education to have individuality. Para daw tuluyan nating makuha ang freedom, dapat magkaroon tayo ng sapat na edukasyon to have individuality. Without Rizal, there may have been a delay in the maturation of our libertarian struggle. Kung hindi dahil kay Rizal sa pagsusulat niya ang kanyang mga nobela, tulad ng Noli Me Tangere at El Filibusterismo, kung hindi ito nabunyag sa publiko, siguro hindi pa rin tayo malaya hanggang sa ngayon. Siguro tayo bilang mga Pilipino ay nasa ilalim pa rin ng pamumuno ng ibang bansa, or nasa kolonya pa rin tayo ng ibang bansa, kung di man Spain or ibang bansa ang namumuno sa atin. Sa ngayon, siguro hindi pa rin tayo ganap na malaya kung wala si Dr. Jose Rizal. The true hero is one of the masses. He does not exist above them. In fact, a whole people can be hero given the proper motivation and articulation of their dreams. So yes, bilang isang bayani, syempre hinahangaan ka ng nakakarami. Pero importante pa rin na mahal ka ng nakakarami at ikaw bilang isang bayani, hindi mo tinitignan na nakakaangat ka sa ibang tao. But rather, lahat nga tayo pwedeng maging bayani. We can be heroes given the proper motivation and articulation. We can be heroes in our own way. Sa simpleng paraan, we can be heroes. It means of helping each other and of course, learning to live together. Prospering as a nation will help build a strong foundation or our motherland. Bilang isang nasyon, pagkakaisa, pag nagtutulungan, of course, nagiging masagana ang ating bayan, ang ating motherland, which is yung Philippines. Pagkakaroon ng pagkakaisa, pagkakaroon ng peace and unity sa ating bansa bilang isang nasyon.
Let's turn around it to Dr. Rizal's writing. So as we all know, he is very known for writing novels, poetries, and letters, right? And in this time, we'll further focus first on his first writing, which is entitled In the Lens of the Filipino, which means also in different language, La Indolencia los Filipinos. So as we all know, dictionary, indolence means avoidance of activity. So what's the reason why Dr. Rizal wrote this letter? The main reason is actually during 1890, Spanish claimed that Filipinos are lazy, that we prefer to gamble our money than to work in the farm. And actually, as we all know, Dr. Rizal disagreed. And that is why he wrote the La Indolencia los Filipinos, because he wants to emphasize that it is not a genetic trait of our fellow Filipinos, but because of the Spanish influence during Spanish colonization. So yeah, that is about the indolence of the Filipino, which is one of the Rizal's writing.
Today we are discussing Rizal's letter to the young woman of Malolos. But before that, let's talk about what happened to this young woman. So on December 12, 1888, a group of 20 women from Malolos, Bulacan participated in a peaceful movement for educational reforms in the country. At that time, education was left entirely in the hands of the clergy, which resulted in the lessons becoming too inundated with religious overtones. Although the students were taught simple arithmetic and reading the alphabet, education was not treated as integral as it is nowadays, and there was a wide disparity over the way boys were taught versus what girls was schooled. The generally accepted justification at that time was that women were destined to be homemakers and have no need for formal schooling beyond basic curriculums. Although a decree was issued in 1863 by the Queen Isabella II that made primary education free and compulsory to all children in the country, including the teaching of Spanish to the populace, the endeavor ultimately failed. Although fingers were pointed towards a distinct lack of classroom and instructors and educators, the clergy of that time actively opposed in the development. In their mind, it would be better to let the natives be ignorant of Spanish so that they can monopolize their position as among the few in the country who can speak both the native tongue and the Spanish, thereby exerting control over the masses. In addition, they feared that learning the Spanish language would enable the natives to read books filled with liberal ideas, which was flourishing in the West at that time. They petitioned the Governor General Valeriano Weyler to allow them to open a night school where they can study the Spanish language. The women desired to learn Spanish because it was the language of politics and society. It was a daring action during that time because it defied the authority of the town's friar. The Philippines during this period was a colony of Spain. As expected, the request was turned down because the parish priest was against it. Although disheartened, the young woman continued to lobby for the school, traveling between Malolos and Manila to convince the Governor General to allow the request. Finally, in February 1889, the women were allowed to open their schools on conditions that the women financed their schooling and that classes will be held in daytime. Nevertheless, their success was a high point in the Philippine history, although the school only was eventually closed down for only a couple of months. The women who were so instrumental in its establishment became active supporters of the revolution against the Spanish that erupted soon after. And finally, on February 17, 1889, Jose Rizal, who would later declared the national hero, wrote from Barcelona, Spain, a letter commending the bravery of this young woman. So to summarize the story, the letters, Rizal wrote these famous letters in Tagalog while he was residing in London upon the request of Marcelo del Pilar. The story behind these letters are the group of young women of Malolos petitioned to the Governor General for permission to open a night school so that they might learn Spanish and or to study Spanish. Father Felipe Garcia, the Spanish priest, objected to the proposal. Therefore, the Governor General turned down the petition also. However, the young women of Malolos, in defiance of the friars' wrath, bravely continued their agitation towards the school, a thing unheard of in the Philippines in those times. They finally succeeded in obtaining the government approval to their project on the condition of Senora Guadalupe Reyes should be their teacher. The incident caused a great stir in the Philippines and in faraway Spain. Del Pilar, writing in Barcelona on February 17, 1889, requested Rizal to send a letter in Tagalog to the brave woman of Malolos. Accordingly, although Rizal is busy in London, he penned this famous letter and sent it to Del Pilar on February 22, 1889. Rizal's letter to the Malalas young women is his way of recognition for them as a brave Filipina who are no longer blinded by the fraud religious beliefs brought by the friars. Rizal, even though a young fellow, believed that they would listen to his advices not because by the wrinkles in his face, but because he is known to be experienced. Under his letter, he mentioned about our freedom as individual human beings, that we must have our own judgment of what is right and wrong. As the saying goes, a fruit will grow the same of its tree. Women are fragile and can be easily influenced because of ignorance and lack of knowledge of her rights. The friars take advantage of the kindness and meekness of this youth and brag about it is with its fellow Spaniards. If only the Filipinos were like the women of Spartan, who have power over their men, maybe no one will dare to touch or harass the women. Rizal wanted to make his people open their eyes and to avoid ignorance of freedom. Ignorance is the cause of slavery during their time, and this is what we must not let happen again. So, to start the analysis, Jose Rizal's legacy to the Filipino woman is embodied in his famous letters or essay, entitled To the Young Woman of Malolos, where he addresses all kinds of women, mothers, wives, and the unmarried, etc., and expresses everything that he wishes for them to keep in mind. As I said earlier, the letters or the essay were written in Tagalog. Rizal penned this writing where he was in London in his response to the request of Marcelo del Pilar. The salient points contained in this letter are the following. The points that Rizal made in this letter are: number one, the rejection of the spiritual authority of the friars. Not all priests in the country that time embodied the true spirit of Christ in his church. Most of them were corrupted by worldly desires and used worldly methods to effect change and force discipline among the people. Basically, Rizal was saying that not religious people or the fathers and all people who are praising God or in the religious aspect are not good, and that some of them are just abusing their power to brainwash and control people, especially in the time of Rizal. So number two, the defense of private judgment. So especially in those times, in Rizal's time, we really have to have an open mind and have silent judgment, private silent judgment, and defend those judgment if we speak about them. Number three, the qualities Filipino mother needs to possess. As evidenced by this portion of his letter, Rizal is greatly concerned of the welfare of the Filipino children and the homes they grew up in. Especially in Rizal's time, they were not the environment of each houses and individual families are not good, especially in the Spanish time, because they were manipulated and controlled by the government and the church of the Spaniards. So Rizal expressed his concern towards the Filipino families and the Filipino children inside their homes. And number four are the duties and responsibilities of Filipino mothers to their children. And number five, duties and responsibilities of a wife to her husband. Filipino women are known to be submissive, tender, and loving, Rizal states in this portion of his letter of how Filipino women ought to be as wives in order to preserve the identity of the race, and finally counsel to young women on their choice of lifetime partners. Rizal's letter to the young women of Malalas emphasized the reason and supported the education of women so that they might be enlightened. Religiousness required reason. Without reason, there was only religiosity. Rizal's letter argued that the woman's value was contingent on their contribution to the Filipino identity, stressing how the character of motherhood reflected the character of the motherland. In particular reason, the affiliation are central to the capabilities approach, which regards women and men as bearers of intrinsic value, helping identify not only the potential but also the limits of Rizal's argument. He did not want his people to live without a religious belief, but he just wants them to apprehend, not to be deceived by the exploitation done by the friars under the robes. The teachings made must be put into actions and not just into words. As for the women, we must have equal rights as same as those men. Believed to be the mothers in future, must raise their children in the right way, because I do believe that the youth is the hope of the nation.
In recent times, it seems that these qualities are gradually lost in the way Filipino women conduct themselves. There are often moments where mothers forget their roles in rearing their children because of the overriding idea of having to earn for the family to supplement their husband's income. Although there is nothing negative about working hard for the welfare of the family, there must always be a balance in the way people go through their life. Failure in home cannot be compensated by any amount of wealth or fame. In the issue discussed in the famous letter of Rizal and Tatil to the young women of Malolos are inequality between men and women, slavery done by the Spaniards because of ignorance, fraud religious beliefs brought by the Frias, the role of mothers in the family, tyranny of some because of the cowardice and negligence on part of others, unreligious acts of the Frias towards the Filipino, education not given to other Filipino by the Spaniards, and lastly, the abuse of Spaniards because of the hospitality of the Filipinos. In the letter, Rizal addresses all kinds of women, mothers, wives, the unmarried, and expresses everything that he wishes them to keep in mind. Jose Rizal was greatly impressed by the fighting spirit of the young women of Malolos had shown. His letter is his own way of recognition for them as brave Filipinos who are no longer blinded by the fraud religious beliefs brought by the Frias. In his letter, he expresses great joy and satisfaction over the battle they had fought. Rizal also emphasizes in the letter his desire for women to be offered the same opportunities as those received by men in terms of education. Education is indeed important not just for men but as well as for women, and everyone has the right to education. Under his letter, he also mentioned about our own freedom as individual human beings, that we must have our own judgment of what is right and wrong. Rizal stipulates a number of important points in this portion of his letter to the young women of Malolos. The central idea here, however, is that whatever mother shown to her children is what the children will become also. As the saying goes, a fruit would grow the same as its tree. In his letter, Rizal enumerates the qualities Filipino mother have to possess: be a noble wife, rear her children in the service of the state. Here Rizal gives reference to the women of Sparta who embodied this quality, set standards of behavior for men around her, Women are fragile and can be as easily influenced because of ignorance and lack of knowledge of her rights. The Frias took advantage of the kindness and meekness of this youth and bragged about it with its fellow Spaniard. If only Filipinas were like the women of Spartans who have power over their men, maybe no one would dare to touch or harass a woman. Jose Rizal also points out to unmarried women that they should not be easily taken by appearances and looks, because they can be very deceiving. Instead, they should take heed of men's firmness of character and lofty ideas, which is indeed very true because, especially today wherein most women were easily deceived by good looks and men not even knowing their true identity and their true self. I'm a little bit disappointed though and discouraged though, true, because some would easily judge a book by its cover without even knowing its content, yet as for me it does really matter if a guy is really good looking. What matter for me is his attitude and value, as well as his weird principle in life, and most especially the different kind of feeling that would feel whenever we are with each other. To sum it all, Rizal wanted to make his people open their eyes and to avoid ignorance of freedom. Ignorance is the cause of slavery during their time, and this is what we must not let happen again. He did not want its people to live without a religious belief, but he just want them apprehend, not to be deceived by the explosions done by the pariahs under their roofs. The teachings made must be input into action, not just in words. Rizal's message to Filipino women. Jose Rizal was greatly impressed by the fighting spirits that the young women of Malolos had shown. In his letter, he expressed great joy and satisfaction over the battle they had fought. In this portion of Rizal's letter, it is obvious that that his ultimate desire was for women to be offered the same opportunities as those received by men in terms of education. During those days, young girls were not sent to schools because of the universal notion that they would soon only be taken as wives and stay at home with the children. Rizal, however, emphasizes on freedom of thought and the right of education, which must be granted to both boys and girls. Rizal's advice to unmarried men and women. Jose Rizal points out to unmarried women that they should not be easily taken by appearance and looks, because this can be very deceiving. Instead, they should take heed of men's firmness of characters and lofty ideas. Rizal further add that there are 3 things that young women must look for a man she intends to be her husband: a noble and honored name, a manly heart, a high spirit incapable of being satisfied with endearing slaves. I must admit that the letter Rizal to the young women of Malolos was extremely effective method of informing them about how the pariah system was exploiting and abusing them. Rizal provided an excellent example of the importance of women in society. Increasing women's interest and participation in combating colonial injustices and vices can be extremely beneficial to the nation. Women should not be underestimated because of their extraordinary qualities. Women wield enormous power, and great men were created by great mothers, whose constant correction and guidance provide a man with a powerful position in the society which he lives. Women should therefore be open-minded, capable of asserting their rights, and serving as excellent role models for their children. For me, Rizal's message to young women is they must possess strong moral beliefs that will enable them to fight up for their rights and refuse to surrender to oppressors. Rizal exhorted women to rise up and acknowledge their role in society.
Allow them to the Filipino or to the Filipino youth. This literary lyceum of Manila in 1879 held a literacy contest that they held with a prize. When this happened, Rizal was 18 years old, so he submitted his poem titled to the Filipino youth. Now the board of judges composed of Spaniards responded to Rizal's poem and awarded him the first prize, which consisted of a silver pen which has the feather shape and decorated with gold as well as the diploma. Now Rizal was congratulated by his former prof in Ateneo, friends, and family. It was a classic literature because it is the first poem that was written by a Filipino and was recognized by Spanish literary. Another reason is that it expresses the Filipinos were the fair of the fatherland and not the Spaniards. Alao Ventud Filipino is an aspiring poem that states the Filipino youth are capable of great heights. It urged the Filipino youth to reach their full potential of harness their skills and talents of the betterment of the countrymen. It motivates the youth to free freedom and human dignity. So, you would notice the poem may have been written during the Spanish colonization, but the essence of it applies even to our generation. Our country experiencing pandemic, yes, we're still in a pandemic, and also as Filipino experiencing inflation, and also our country has so many internal issues unresolved. The poem reminded us that we, as the Filipino youth, have a duty to fulfill our countrymen with our full extent. In order to this, we must harness our talents and skills just to help or to help our country. We must take initiative to help our country. Every one of us can be also contribute to have a better development of our country. So, the vision of Rizal, head for our country, can become a reality if you remember our youth.
To the Flowers of Heidelberg. The poem was originally written in Spanish, a Las Flores del Heidelberg by Jose Rizal in the year 1886, and widely translated in English by many. Trivia is the most famous and widely accepted translation was done by Philippine National Artist for Literature, Nick Joaquin. This poem is about loneliness, longing, and homesickness for his family and country while he was away to complete his studies in ophthalmology. He was fascinated by the flowers in spring, made him miss the flowers in Calamba. However, the last stanza of the poem put Rizal into realization about him being useless because he is serving other country rather than his own.
Mi Retiro is about the forest in Lapitan. He pays homage to the forest and talks about the big woods. Rizal lived in the forest and it was behind him. His house was the foot of the hill where he came from. Rizal grew up next to Mount Mapili in Calamba. In October 22, 1895, Rizal wrote a poem titled Mi Retiro. It was a request by his mother who always been in the inspiration of this poetry. This poem is regarded by some of his admirers as the most profound and noble poem he ever composed. He sent this poem to his mother on October 22, 1895. In this poem, Rizal described his exile in Dapitan, where from 1892 to 1896, he lived in an exciting but fruitful life. Even in his exile, Rizal proved that life can still be abundant and full of achievements. He lived as a merchant and a farmer and built tree house made from bamboo, wood and nipa. Interestingly, his houses were of varied geometrical shapes.
The text of the poem, The Ultimo Adios, My Final Farewell written by the national hero of the Philippines, Dr. Jose Rizal in Fort Santiago on the eve of his execution by the Spanish on December 30, 1896. Ayon sa tradisyonal na paniniwala, sinasabing isinulat ito ni Rizal noong gabi ng bisperas ng pagbaril sa kanya, December 29, 1896. Mi Ultimo Adios is a poem that tells us how beautiful the Philippines is and how Rizal wants us to learn from our past and to see the truth about how the world views us. Rizal wrote his final poem on a single paper revealing his strong nationalism and unwavering love for his country. The poem consists of 14 5-line stanzas and was written in Spanish. It became an inspirational speech to some nation declaring for independence or equal rights for the country or the people. The Ultimo Adios became the last push to many nations aiming towards independence and equal rights. The poem came to be known as Mi Ultimo Adios or My Last Farewell. The poem has been translated many times in the number of languages. One of the most popular translations is the English version by Charles E. Derbyshire.